Clean it with your tongue, the manager hissed, her manicured finger pointing at the muddy footprint on the pristine white floor. Now. Marcus Chun, 34 years old, stood frozen in the entrance of Sterling Gourmet Market, his worn jacket dripping from the spring rain. The plastic bag containing his daughter's birthday cake hung from his trembling hand. He had saved 3 months to afford that cake, $27 earned washing dishes after his factory shift. I said now, Karen Whitmore repeated, her voice sharp as glass. She wore authority like armor, designer suit, platinum hair pulled tight, lips painted blood red. Behind her, a dozen customers had stopped to watch. Marcus glanced at the muddy print his boot left. Just one footprint. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll clean it. Just let me get paper towels. With your tongue. Karen's smile was cruel, deliberate. That's what people like you deserve. Coming into a respectable establishment looking like that. What Karen didn't know was that Marcus had been released from prison 3 weeks ago. 5 years inside for a crime he'd actually committed, though the circumstances were more desperate than criminal. His daughter Emma had needed emergency surgery. His insurance had lapsed. The hospital wanted $20,000 up front. So Marcus had robbed a convenience store with a replica gun, gotten caught 2 blocks away, and spent Emma's entire childhood behind bars. Standing in that entrance, Marcus felt the familiar weight of shame pressing down. The same shame that had followed him through 5 years of prison yards, parole hearings, and 73 job rejections. But beneath that shame, something else stirred, something that had kept him alive in a place designed to break men like him. Patience. Officer Sarah Mitchell had been in her patrol car across the street when she noticed the commotion through the store's large windows. 22 years on the force had given her an instinct for when situations were about to go wrong. She grabbed her radio and stepped into the rain. Inside, Marcus slowly lowered himself to his knees. The cake bag crinkled as he set it aside. His daughter's face flashed through his mind, Emma, now 10 years old, who barely remembered him. Tomorrow was her birthday, their first together since she was 5. He couldn't mess this up. That's right, Karen said, her voice dripping satisfaction. Show everyone what you really are. Marcus bent forward, weathered hands pressing the cold floor. In prison, he'd learned that survival sometimes meant swallowing dignity. The other inmates had called him the professor, because he'd spent years earning 2 college degrees through correspondence courses, business administration and social work. While other men lifted weights or fought over cigarettes, Marcus filled notebooks with plans for when he got out. But none of those plans included this moment. Just as his face neared the floor, the automatic doors whooshed open. Officer Mitchell's boots appeared in Marcus's peripheral vision. Step away from that man, Sarah's voice cut through the store. Now. Karen turned, expression shifting from triumph to confusion. Officer, I'm simply asking this person to clean up the mess he made. I saw everything through the window, Sarah interrupted, her hand resting on her belt. Not her weapon, just her belt. But the gesture carried weight. What you're doing is harassment. Potentially assault. Marcus looked up and met Officer Mitchell's eyes. What he saw made his throat tight, not pity, but understanding. Like recognition. Sarah had seen that look in her brother's eyes after he'd been released from addictions prison. Her brother hadn't made it. 3 months after getting clean, he'd overdosed because the weight of starting over had crushed him. She wouldn't let that happen again. Not today. Sir, Sarah said gently, please stand up. You don't have to do this. Marcus rose slowly, retrieving his cake. His hand shook now, but not from fear. From relief that someone had actually stopped this. Karen's face turned tomato red. Do you know who I am? I've been managing this store for 8 years. This man came in looking like a homeless vagrant. This man, Sarah said, voice hardening, is a customer. Who has rights? Now, are you going to let him purchase his items, or do I need to have a conversation with your corporate office about discrimination? The store went silent. Somewhere in back, a freezer hummed. A baby started crying. Karen's eyes narrowed dangerously. Fine. But this isn't over. What neither of them knew was that Karen's words were more prophetic than she could imagine. This encounter would set off a chain of events that would expose secrets neither wanted revealed, bring justice in unexpected ways, and prove that sometimes the people society throws away are the ones who end up saving it. If you're connecting with Marcus's story and want to see how this unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next will restore your faith in second chances. Marcus paid with exact change, bills he'd ironed flat that morning. His hands still trembled as the young cashier carefully bagged his purchase without meeting his gaze. Everyone was pretending nothing happened, returning to their shopping with practiced ignorance. Officer Mitchell walked him to the exit, her presence a shield against the stairs. Outside, the rain had softened to drizzle. The spring air smelled like wet concrete and exhaust. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "You would have done it," Sarah interrupted, not unkindly. "You would have gotten on that floor because you've learned that sometimes survival means surrendering pride." I recognize that look. My brother had it. Marcus met her eyes. Had. He's gone now. Sarah's voice was flat, professional, but something flickered behind her expression. Overdose. 3 months after release. She handed Marcus her card. "You ever need anything, job reference, someone to vouch for your character, whatever, you call me. Day or night." Marcus took the card, his throat too tight for words. He nodded once, then walked toward the bus stop, cradling the cake like it contained something more precious than frosting. Inside the store, Karen Whitmore stood at the manager's office window, watching Marcus disappear. Her reflection showed a woman whose perfectly composed exterior was cracking. She pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Michael? It's Karen. We need to talk about the background check policy." "Yes, the one about not hiring people with records. Something just happened that made me realize we need to be more aggressive about keeping certain elements out." What Karen didn't mention was that certain elements had been her obsession since her brother-in-law was murdered during a convenience store robbery 8 years ago. The perpetrator had served only 6 years before release. 6 years for taking her sister's husband, leaving her niece fatherless. Karen had transferred to this location specifically because it was in a neighborhood where released offenders settled, Section 8 housing, halfway houses, re-entry programs. She'd made it her personal mission to make their lives difficult. In her mind, she was protecting the community. In reality, she was punishing proxies for a crime Marcus had nothing to do with. Marcus arrived at his small apartment, a studio in a converted motel where the carpet smelled like decades of problems. He set the cake in the refrigerator next to meager groceries: eggs, bread, instant coffee, cheap lunch meat. Tomorrow, Emma would visit for the first time since his release. His ex-wife Jessica had finally agreed, though court orders limited visits to 4 hours, supervised. He stared at Jessica's morning text. Emma's excited but nervous. Please don't disappoint her again. Again. As if he'd chosen prison. As if desperation and love hadn't driven him to make the worst decision of his life. Marcus opened his laptop and logged into email. 74 job rejections now. The newest had arrived that morning. "Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates who better fit our company culture." He knew what that meant. The checkbox on applications: "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" But Marcus had learned patience. While other inmates gave up, he'd studied. His business degree wasn't just paper. He'd aced every course, maintained a 4.0. His social work degree taught him about systems, policies, rehabilitation theories. Late at night in his cell, he drafted a business plan. 37 pages, single-spaced, every detail researched and refined. A re-entry program that would actually work, something real, built by someone who understood both sides. He just needed capital. And credibility. 2 things ex-convicts couldn't easily obtain. His flip phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus Chun. A woman's voice, professional but warm. Speaking. "My name is Janet Rodriguez. I'm the director of Second Chance Staffing Solutions. Officer Sarah Mitchell called about an hour ago. She thinks you'd be excellent for a position we're filling." Marcus sat straighter. "I'm listening." "Entry level, I'll be honest. Warehouse logistics coordinator. But it's legal, steady, and we specialize in giving people with records a fair shot. Can you come in tomorrow for an interview?" Tomorrow. Emma's birthday. The 4 hours with his daughter were sacred. "I have a prior commitment tomorrow I absolutely cannot break," Marcus said carefully. "But I can come any other day. Any time." Janet's voice softened. Family. My daughter. First birthday we're celebrating together in 5 years. Then we'll make it work. How about Monday, 9 a.m.? After hanging up, Marcus allowed himself 30 seconds to feel hope. Then reality returned. Entry-level warehouse meant maybe $30,000 yearly. Enough to survive, not enough to build anything. Not enough to launch his program. Not enough to prove to Jessica and Emma that he could be more than his worst mistake. At Sterling Gourmet Market, Karen scrolled through security footage from the entrance cameras. She'd recognized something in Marcus's face when he looked up at Officer Mitchell. Not defiance, not submission. Something else. Calculation. Intelligence. She zoomed in on the moment before he'd knelt. His eyes had swept the store, taking in details. Security cameras. Customers watching. Emergency exits. Like he was mapping escape routes. Assessing threats. Like someone who'd spent time in an environment where constant vigilance meant survival. Karen saved the footage to a thumb drive. She had a friend in municipal records. By tomorrow, she'd know exactly who Marcus Chun was and what he'd done. And then she'd make sure everyone else knew too. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, thinking about Mike today. 8 years and it still hurts. Karen's jaw tightened. She typed back, I know. I'm making sure people like his killer know they're not welcome here. But Marcus Chun wasn't a killer. He was a father who'd made a desperate choice. And that distinction, the one Karen refused to acknowledge, would become the fault line along which everything else would crack. Emma arrived at exactly 2 p.m. on Saturday, holding Jessica's hand like a lifeline. She'd grown so much, no longer the 5-year-old who'd cried at the courtroom, but a girl with braces and her mother's skeptical eyes. Marcus felt his chest crack open. Hi, Dad. The word sounded foreign in her mouth, like she was testing it. Hi, sweetheart. Marcus knelt to her level, careful not to crowd her space. I got your favorite, chocolate cake with vanilla frosting. Emma's face softened slightly. She remembered. That small detail seemed to matter. Jessica stayed for required supervision, sitting stiffly on Marcus's only chair while he and Emma ate cake on the floor. The 4 hours passed like water through fingers. Too fast, too precious. When they left, Emma hugged him briefly. It was enough to keep Marcus breathing for another week. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Second Chance staffing 30 minutes early, wearing his only suit, the one from his parole hearing. Janet Rodriguez greeted him with a firm handshake and knowing eyes. Officer Mitchell speaks highly of you, Janet said, reviewing his application. 2 degrees earned during incarceration. Impressive. I had time. Marcus kept his voice neutral. You had discipline. Most people waste their time inside. You invested yours. She stamped his application approved. You start Wednesday. Warehouse manager is Daniel Foster, former Marine, also Second Chance. He'll understand where you're coming from. As Marcus left, his phone rang. Sarah Mitchell's number. Marcus, heads up, Sarah said without preamble. Karen Whitmore filed a complaint against me for harassment. She's also asking questions about you around the neighborhood. Be careful. Marcus's jaw tightened. What kind of questions? The kind that end with someone losing their fresh start. Sarah paused. She lost family to violence. Her brother-in-law was killed in a robbery 8 years ago. She's not evil, Marcus. She's broken. But broken people can still do damage. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his car, a 1997 sedan bought for $800, and made a decision. He pulled out his laptop and opened a document he'd been drafting for 3 years, the Phoenix Initiative, a comprehensive re-entry program. If Karen wanted to destroy him, she'd find his record eventually. But what if, instead of hiding, he became visible in a different way? What if he turned his story into something useful? Marcus spent the next week working double duty, warehouse shifts during the day, building his program proposal at night. He reached out to Janet Rodriguez, who connected him with other re-entry organizations. He contacted former professors from his correspondence courses. He drafted budgets, outcome metrics, partnership proposals. And he documented everything Karen did. Because Karen was escalating. She'd printed flyers with Marcus's mugshot, public record unfortunately, and posted them around the neighborhood. Convicted felon living in your community. Protect your families. She'd contacted his landlord, suggesting the building's insurance might object to housing criminals. She'd even approached Jessica, warning her that Marcus was dangerous. Jessica had called immediately. Marcus, what's happening? Some woman came to my work saying you're a threat to Emma. Marcus explained everything, the grocery store, the humiliation, Karen's vendetta. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. That's insane, she finally said. You made a mistake, but you paid for it. This woman has no right. She stopped. Do you need help? Legal help. It was the first time in 5 years Jessica had offered him anything beyond supervised visits. Marcus felt something crack in his chest again, but differently. Actually, Marcus said slowly, I might need character witnesses. I'm putting together something. A program for people like me. But I'll need credibility. Send me the details, Jessica said. I'll help however I can. 2 weeks later, Marcus presented the Phoenix Initiative to the City Council's Community Development Committee. Janet Rodriguez attended. Daniel Foster from the warehouse attended. Sarah Mitchell attended in uniform, her presence a statement. And Karen Whitmore attended, sitting in the back row with crossed arms and a folder full of Marcus's criminal history. Marcus's presentation was flawless, data-driven, emotionally intelligent, fiscally responsible. He spoke about recidivism rates, employment barriers, family reunification. He spoke about second chances not as charity, but as investment. He didn't mention his own story until the end. I robbed a store 5 years ago, Marcus said quietly, looking directly at the committee. My daughter needed surgery. I had no insurance, no options, no time. So I made the worst decision of my life. I paid for that decision with 5 years of freedom. But I also used those 5 years to become someone who could help prevent others from making the same choice. Karen stood abruptly. This man is a criminal trying to profit from his crimes. Ma'am, you're out of order, the committee chair interrupted. Sit down or leave. Karen left, her heels clicking furiously against tile. But Marcus saw something in her exit, not victory, but desperation. She was losing control of the narrative she'd built around people like him. The committee voted unanimously to forward the Phoenix Initiative to the mayor's office for consideration. It wasn't funding yet, but it was momentum, visibility, legitimacy. After the meeting, Sarah approached Marcus. That took guts. But you know she's not going to stop, right? I know, Marcus said. But neither am I. What Marcus didn't know was that Karen had already made her next move, one that would force everything into the open in ways none of them expected. The email arrived at 6 a.m. on Thursday, sent to every business owner, school administrator, and community leader within 3 miles. Subject line, Dangerous Criminal Marcus Chin. Protect your community. Marcus discovered it when Janet Rodriguez called, voice tight with concern. Marcus, check your email. Karen Whitmore just went nuclear. The message contained everything, his mugshot, court documents, sentencing details, even his current address. But Karen had added her own commentary, describing him as a violent offender targeting our neighborhood, and a con artist using a fake charity to gain access to vulnerable populations. By noon, Marcus had been suspended from his warehouse job pending investigation. His landlord served an eviction notice citing lease violations. 3 parents filed complaints with the city council demanding the Phoenix Initiative be shut down. Jessica called in tears, saying Emma's school had flagged Marcus as a prohibited visitor. Marcus sat in his apartment, watching 5 years of careful rebuilding collapse in real time. His phone rang continuously, reporters, angry neighbors, strangers with opinions about his right to exist. He turned it off and stared at the wall. Then Sarah Mitchell knocked on his door. Pack a bag, she said without greeting. You're staying at my place tonight. This mob mentality is dangerous, and I'm not letting you sit here alone. At Sarah's modest house across town, Marcus finally broke. I followed every rule. Did everything right. And she destroyed it all in one morning. Not everything, Sarah said carefully. She opened her laptop and turned it toward him. Look at this. It was a video, time-stamped from 2 days ago. Security footage from Sterling Gourmet Market. But not the entrance, the back office. Karen Whitmore was clearly visible, sitting at a computer, accessing files she shouldn't have access to. Employee records. Background checks. Private information. She's been doing this for months, Sarah explained. I pulled security logs after her complaint against me. She's been systematically targeting anyone with a record who works or shops there. Privacy violations, harassment statutes, probably a dozen employment regulations. Marcus watched Karen's face on screen, focused, determined, certain of her righteousness even as she committed crimes that mirrored the vigilante justice that had destroyed her family. There's more, Sarah continued. She pulled up bank records, public information obtained through legitimate channels. Karen's brother-in-law, the one killed in the robbery? His life insurance paid out $300,000. Karen was the beneficiary because her sister was too unstable. She's been using those funds to finance her personal crusade, hiring private investigators, paying for background checks, even bribing a municipal clerk to flag ex-offenders in public databases. Marcus stared at the documents. She's breaking the law to punish people who broke the law. Exactly. Sarah's expression was grim. And I think it's time someone held her accountable. The next morning, Marcus walked into Sterling Gourmet Market at 10 a.m., peak shopping time. Karen saw him immediately, her face shifting from surprise to fury. "You're not welcome here," she hissed, reaching for her phone. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Marcus said calmly. "Officer Mitchell is already outside. I asked her to be here." Karen's confidence wavered. Marcus pulled out his own phone and opened the video file Sarah had sent him. He held it up so Karen could see herself on screen, accessing files, compiling information, building her vendetta database. "This is illegal surveillance of employees and customers," Marcus said quietly, voice steady despite his racing heart. "You violated federal privacy laws, state harassment statutes, and corporate policy. But worse than that, you've become exactly what you hate." Karen's face went white. Around them, customers had stopped shopping, sensing drama. "You don't understand," Karen whispered. "People like you killed my family." "People like me?" Marcus interrupted, voice rising now. "I'm not a murderer, Karen. I was a desperate father who made a terrible choice and paid for it. But you? You've been hunting people for crimes they already served time for. You've been playing judge, jury, and executioner because you're too broken to let yourself heal." Tears streamed down Karen's face, but Marcus wasn't finished. "The man who killed your brother-in-law served his sentence. 6 years. You think that's not enough? Take it up with the justice system. But terrorizing every person who made a mistake doesn't bring him back. It just creates more victims." Sarah Mitchell entered the store, her presence official and undeniable. "Karen Whitmore, I need you to come with me. The district attorney's office has several questions about your activities over the past 8 months. Karen's hands trembled as she removed her manager badge and set it on the counter. Her carefully constructed world, built on grief and rage and the illusion of control, crumbled in real time. Other employees watched in stunned silence as she walked toward the exit, shoulders slumped. But at the door, Karen turned back. "I lost everything," she said, voice breaking. "And people like you just get to start over?" "No," Marcus said, and his voice was gentle now, almost kind. "People like me have to fight for every inch of starting over. We carry our mistakes like stones in our pockets every single day. You didn't lose everything, Karen. You still have choices. You still have tomorrow. That's more than my 5 years gave me." As Sarah led Karen away, the store manager, an older man who'd been watching from the back, approached Marcus. "I'm Robert Sterling," he said. "I own this chain. I had no idea Karen was doing any of this." He extended his hand. "I'd like to fund your Phoenix initiative. Consider it corporate responsibility. And an apology for what you endured here." Marcus shook his hand, too stunned to immediately respond. "Also," Robert continued, "we're instituting a new hiring policy, ban the box, fair chance employment, the whole package. I'd like you to consult on implementation." That evening, the local news ran 2 stories: store manager arrested for harassment campaign against ex-offenders, and local business leader launches revolutionary re-entry program. Marcus's phone exploded with messages. Job offers. Interview requests. Apologies from the city council. And one text from Jessica. Emma wants to know if she can come over this weekend. No supervision required. I trust you. Marcus sat in Sarah's living room, reading that message over and over, until Sarah handed him a beer and raised her own. To second chances, she said. And to people brave enough to demand them. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a renovated building on the east side, watching workers install the sign, The Phoenix Initiative, Second Chances, Real Solutions. The program had exceeded every projection. 32 formerly incarcerated individuals placed in sustainable employment. 15 family reunifications facilitated. Partnerships with 3 major employers committed to fair chance hiring. And Marcus, once jobless and desperate, now directed a program with actual funding, actual staff, actual impact. Emma visited every weekend now, sometimes staying overnight in the small house Marcus had rented. Last Sunday, she'd asked if she could bring friends over. I want them to meet my dad, she'd said casually, as if those words didn't completely shatter and rebuild him simultaneously. Jessica had started joining them for dinners occasionally. Not reconciliation exactly, but something softer than the sharp distance that had existed before. You're different now, she told him last week. Not just rehabilitated. Actually different. Daniel Foster from the warehouse had become Marcus's operations director. Janet Rodriguez served on the board. Sarah Mitchell taught a monthly workshop on navigating law enforcement interactions. Even Robert Sterling had invested additional capital, turning his initial guilt into genuine partnership. The Phoenix Initiative's success had attracted national attention. Marcus had been invited to speak at conferences, consult with policymakers, share his model with other cities. His business degree and social work training, earned in a cell with fluorescent lighting and constant noise, had become credentials that opened doors instead of closing them. But the most unexpected development involved Karen Whitmore. After her arrest, Karen had been charged with multiple counts of harassment, privacy violations, and misuse of company resources. The prosecutor, recognizing her actions stemmed from unprocessed trauma, had offered a plea deal, 2 years probation, mandatory therapy, and 300 hours of community service. Karen had requested to serve those hours at the Phoenix Initiative. Marcus had accepted, despite Janet's reservations and Sarah's outright objections. She tried to destroy you, Sarah had argued. Why give her access to do it again? Because, Marcus had replied quietly, someone gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it. Maybe she needs to understand what that feels like. Now Karen sat in the Phoenix Initiative's small office 3 days a week, answering phones and filing paperwork. She didn't speak much to Marcus at first, her presence heavy with shame and resentment mixed equally. But gradually, surrounded by people rebuilding their lives, something in her began to shift. One afternoon, Marcus found her crying in the supply closet. She looked up, mascara streaked, defenses finally collapsed. I don't know how to stop hating, she admitted. I've been angry for so long, I don't remember who I was before. Marcus sat beside her on an overturned bucket. Anger's easier than grief. I learned that inside. Staying mad at the system, at myself, at the world, it gave me something to focus on besides everything I'd lost. How did you stop? Karen asked. I didn't stop being angry, Marcus said. I just started building something bigger than my anger. Something that made my mistakes mean something. Karen wiped her eyes. I used his insurance money, Mike's money, to hurt people. People who probably made mistakes just like yours. Desperate mistakes. Then use your remaining time here to help them instead, Marcus suggested. Transform the money's purpose. Transform your purpose. 3 months into her community service, Karen had proposed a victim-offender dialogue program, a space where people harmed by crime could meet with offenders seeking accountability, not for forgiveness necessarily, but for understanding. Marcus had approved the pilot program immediately. On the day of the Phoenix Initiative's official grand opening, over 200 people gathered. City officials, business leaders, formerly incarcerated participants, families reunited. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at faces that represented every part of his journey. Emma sat in the front row beside Jessica, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself. Sarah Mitchell stood near the back in uniform. Daniel Foster and Janet Rodriguez flanked the stage. And Karen Whitmore sat in the middle section, no longer hiding, no longer hunting. 5 years ago, Marcus began, I made the worst decision of my life. I hurt people. I broke the law. I deserved consequences, and I received them. But punishment alone didn't make me a better person. What changed me was education, opportunity, and people who believed I could be more than my worst moment. He paused, finding Emma's eyes. My daughter lost 5 years with her father because I was desperate and stupid. I can't get those years back. But I can make sure other children don't lose their parents to a system that punishes without rehabilitating. I can make sure other desperate people have options before they make desperate choices. Marcus gestured to the building behind him. This place exists because people gave me chances I didn't deserve. Officer Sarah Mitchell, who protected my dignity when someone tried to take it. Janet Rodriguez, who saw potential instead of a record. Robert Sterling, who turned his company's failure into systemic change. And yes, even Karen Whitmore, who taught me that broken people who hurt others are still just broken people who need healing. Karen met his gaze across the crowd, and for the first time since her brother-in-law's death 8 years ago, she felt something besides rage. She felt hope. After the ceremony, Marcus found a quiet moment on the building's back steps. Sarah joined him, 2 coffee cups in hand. You did it, she said simply. You actually did it. Marcus thought about the grocery store floor he'd almost licked clean. About the prison cell where he'd studied by flashlight. About Emma's hand in his last Sunday, small and trusting and finally believing he wouldn't disappear again. We did it, Marcus corrected. All of us. Because second chances aren't given, they're built by people brave enough to believe change is possible. Sarah raised her coffee cup. To building instead of destroying. Marcus touched his cup to hers, watching the sun set over a neighborhood that had tried to reject him but had instead become his home. In the distance, he could hear Emma's laugh as she played with other children in the community garden they'd planted. Karen Whitmore had tried to clean him away like dirt on a pristine floor. Instead, she'd helped him prove something essential, that the mess of being human, the mistakes, the failures, the desperate choices, doesn't define us permanently. What defines us is what we build after we've been broken. Marcus Chun had been told to clean a floor with his tongue. Instead, he'd cleaned a broken system with his determination, his education, and his refusal to let shame be the final word. The best revenge, he'd learned, isn't destroying those who tried to destroy you. It's becoming so undeniably valuable that they have no choice but to recognize your humanity. And if you believe in second chances, for yourself or for others, subscribe to this channel. Because everyone deserves the opportunity to be more than their worst mistake. Everyone deserves the chance to transform their pain into purpose. That's not just Marcus Chen's story. That's the promise of redemption itself.